All right, so if you would go into your packet, look at the first page where it says composition of functions, and I'm looking at number 3. Make sure that you're taking notes in your packet. Okay, so these kinds of questions are really pretty easy. What they're always going to do is they're going to give you a set of function equations, okay? In this case, you've got 3 of them. And then they ask you to compute the following. So we want a numerical answer. So if we look at this symbol right here is called like a composition symbol. So the way we read this is G of H of 2. So I'm going to say that again, G of H of 2. All right, now mathematically speaking, what does this really mean? So what it means is we're going to work backwards. So you're going to take the 2 and we're going to plug it into the H equation first. So we're going to find H of 2. So we just go up here, we put 2 in there, and we know that that would be 2 squared, which is 4, plus 1, which would be 5. Okay? So now that we know that this H of 2 is 5, then what we do is we bring down that G from up there, and we evaluate that. Okay? So let me just kind of repeat again. So basically what we did was we found H of 2, we got its value, and once we get what H of 2 is, we replace it with what its value is, which was 5, and then find G of that 5. Okay, so now all we're going to do is we're going to plug in 5 in for G into the G of X. So we've got 3 times 5, which is 15. So then our G of H of 2, final answer is 15. Okay, so again, please make sure you're taking notes in your packet. All right, now let's look at number 5. Same set of equations, but we just have a different composition. All right, so now when we look at this one, what you're going to do is, again, we're going to read backwards, so we're going to take the 1, plug it into the F. When we get that answer, we're going to take that answer and plug it into the G. When we get that answer, then we're going to take that answer and plug it into the H. Okay, now this is a different way of writing composition. You don't see that little circle-y thing, right? But it means the same thing, so I'm going to just read it to you. H of G of F of 1. That was fun, right? So I'll start with finding F of 1 first. So I'm going to do F of 1. So 2 times 1, which is 2, minus 1, which is 1. Okay, so F of 1 is 1. So now what we're doing is I'm just going to bring some stuff down. Now remember, F of 1 is now 1, so that's what I'm replacing that with. So now I need to find H of G of 1. Well, we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to read from right to left. So I'm going to evaluate my G of 1. So G of 1 would be 3 times 1, which is 3. So now I know that G of 1 is 3, so now I'm going to bring down that H, and G of 1 I'm replacing with 3. And let's find that. So that's going to be 3 squared plus 1, which would be 10. So final answer, H of G of F of 1 is going to be 10. And that is your answer. Please, again, make sure you're taking notes in your packets. So next, I would like you to turn the page, go to page 2 in your packet, and we're going to look at number 2. So we have an exponential equation here. So the problem is I need to solve for x. But not only is that x attached to the 5 that I just wrote, but it's also attached to that very pesky exponent, which I don't like. So we can actually get rid of an exponent if we multiply by its reciprocal. But since it's an exponent, when we multiply, we have to keep it an exponent. So that's 2/3. And this would be 2/3 as well. Because when you do 3/2 times 2/3, that would be 6 over 6. So that turns into a 1. Now you did this in Algebra 2, but just as a refresher. So this is all going to just disappear, right, because it's 1. So x plus 5, that quantity to the first power is just x plus 5. All right, so then on the left-hand side here, we're going to have x plus 5. And actually, you know what? I'm just going to write this as 8 to the 2/3 power. Now you should have learned something last year in Algebra 2. And we had this little saying, and it was called power over root. So what you can do is you can take that 8 to the 2/3 power, and we can rewrite it because you don't have a calculator. So last year you did it in the calculator. This year you can. So the root is 3, so it's the third root or the cube root of 8. And then the power is our exponent. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to do this first. So let's take the cube root of 8, which would be 2, right, because 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. And now we're going to square. Please make sure you're taking notes in your packet. So we have x plus 5 equals 4. And now that's pretty easy, right? So we subtract the 5 over, and we have x equals -1. Let's try one more. This one, I would probably not get rid of the exponent first. I would subtract that 1 over first. Okay, try to isolate that x as much as you can. So I have x to the 2/3 power equals 64. Now, just like we did on the last one, we want to get rid of that exponent, and the way we get rid of an exponent is by multiplying by its reciprocal. And what that does is, in this case, we get 6 over 6 on the left-hand side there, so that's just x to the first, which is great. That's what we want. But what you do to one side, you have to do to the other, so that's going to be x to the 3/2 power over there on the right-hand side. Let's bring down the left side, so we're just going to get x equals, and that's 64 to the 3/2. So let's do power over root. Well, our root is a 2, so really that's a square root. You can put a little 2 here if you want to, but we always assume that if we don't see anything here, that is a 2, okay, because it's a square root. Square means 2. And then we have 64. And then we're going to cube that, right, because that's the power. So the square root of 64 is 8, right? And then we have to cube that. All right, well, we got to do this by hand, so this is really 8 times 8 times 8, and we know that this is 64. So then we just do 64 times 8, and 512, right? So final answer, x equals 512.